Welcome to the Prison Professors podcast. We serve people who face challenges with prosecution, sentencing, and prison. My co-founders are Sean Hopwood and Justin Paperny. My name is Michael Santos. We create digital content and our team offers individual consulting services. We also assist agencies that want to improve outcomes. To learn how we can help you, text the word PrisonPro to 44222. Again, text PrisonPro to 44222 and get our free brochure. You can also visit us at prisonprofessors.com or contact Justin at 818-424-2220. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Send confirmation that you reviewed our podcast and we'll send you a free digital book. Stay tuned for a 20 to 30-minute episode of Prison Professors. Welcome to Prison Professors. I am Michael Santos. Today I'm going to introduce you to an individual that I'm speaking with for the first time. You see, one of the challenges that I have at Prison Professors is try to find inspiring individuals who have overcome struggle. Many of those people, as you know, have gone through the criminal justice system. Some of them have overcome struggle of a different type, such as substance abuse. And today we have the honor of listening to Ed Kressey, who has served time in jail. Now he is devoting his life to prison reform. But what's really inspiring about him, or at least that I found inspiring, was he took a self-directed path to overcome addictions. And I know a lot of people who go through the criminal justice system have that problem. So I thought it'd be very useful to our audience to listen and learn from the great Ed Kressey, who's from San Francisco. Ed, thanks so much for spending time with us. Why don't you give our audience a more full and complete background of who you are and what you do?
Sure, of course. Well, Michael, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. I love what you're doing, what you and Sean and Justin are doing. It's really wonderful. It's inspiring, and I'm honored to play a part in it. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you.
I describe myself as a former world champion at failure. Michael, I had so much going for me. I was very well provided for, a college education paid for. I had a career with Genentech, a big biotech company out here. I owned a home right here in San Francisco. But I took all that and much more, threw it away to decades of drug addiction. As you mentioned, methamphetamine. My last 11 years, I was a meth addict. I ended up spending a couple of months in jail, a few nights here and there in homeless shelters, years in destitution.
What was your role at Genentech?
I was sort of a low-level project manager. They treated me very well.
What year did you start with them?
I started in 96. Worked there.
Oh my God. So if you had those stock options today, you'd be funding prison reform.
I cashed them all out and put them in a glass pipe and smoked them.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry to hear that struggle. But that's the important struggle for people to hear is that when we make decisions that are not in alignment with values and goals, we sometimes find ourselves in a downward spiral. And it sounds like that's what happened to you if you had that 11-year struggle with substance abuse. What else did you struggle with as you were going through those 11 years?
Well, for me, addiction was, drugs were never my problem. Drugs were always my attempt at a solution. My problem was me. I felt I hated myself. I wanted to be a completely different person. I took drugs not to become a high version of myself. I took drugs to change into someone completely different. And as we know, there are not enough drugs in the entire world to accomplish that. I took enough drugs the path I got on was doing enough drugs to destroy myself, and I almost got there.
And I submit that, or I would guess that your substance abuse problems led to challenges in the employment market where you couldn't find a job or couldn't hold on to a job?
Absolutely. A number of fine individuals and organizations gave me opportunities. Stanford University, Genentech, others hired me. I took the trust that they put into me, and I betrayed it. I got high. I turned back to drugs. I was just a terrible employee. They either let me go, or the organizations that let me go, they were right to do so. I've since made amends and put my life back on a new path, but this is where my addiction, the decisions I made, where I let my addiction take me.
How old were you when you started to have this struggle with addiction?
I got drunk for the first time when I was 14. I formed a very strong association between alcohol and social acceptance. When I was a kid, I was ostracized. I was just a weird kid. I was very sensitive. I would cry easily. I liked to escape into fantasy. I brought home big stacks of books from the library. I was very uncoordinated, couldn't compete in sports like the other kids. So where I went to high school, reading, crying, being uncoordinated, that's not a campaign platform upon which one might run to become class president or most popular kid. So I was just very ostracized. I felt the victimization that I felt from the schoolyard bullies and the cliques of popular kids. I got comfortable in the victim role, and I learned to victimize myself through drugs, through alcohol, and later drugs.
So it started at 14. You said it escalated until your latter years. What year was it that you decided to make a change in your life?
I decided to make I left methamphetamine. I quit methamphetamine when I was 37 in 2007.
So from 14 to 37, you'd been in some type of a spiral with drugs and substance abuse really bringing you down. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I accomplished a lot. I worked hard. I had a lot of help. I did some good things, but eventually my drug addiction took over. And drugs were not the only thing I cared about, but they were always number one. Drugs were always number one. And the relationships, the career, the family, everything else, that was important, but it took a distant second, third, fourth place to drugs. That's where
And in what ways did your challenges with substance abuse influence your relationship with law enforcement?
I had a lot of interactions with law enforcement. I was deep in methamphetamine psychosis. I used to show up at the FBI offices with electronics that I thought cameras. People would put cameras in and were watching me. I made a lot of contacts to the FBI. Never anything threatening, never anything anonymous. Just stuff that when I look back, I see people who are in trouble, who need the help of organizations like the police department, like the FBI. I took resources away from that by being this selfish drug addict, and that was something I had to make amends for.
Did you ever get involved in criminal activity that could have exposed you to criminal charges?
Oh, absolutely. I guess by definition, a drug addict is a criminal. Drugs are illegal, so we need to be criminals to be drug addicts. And to be honest, Michael, when I was 16, I made two mistakes. I allowed myself to succumb to drug addiction, and I began to engage in criminal activity. The only reason I served only 2 months, I deserved my 2 months, but the only reason I didn't serve much more time is, let's face it, it's the color of my skin. It's the unfair advantages society gave me because of my skin color, because of my socioeconomic background. Those unfair advantages I got, to give you an example, when I was a low-level drug dealer. I dealt drugs, cocaine to support my own habit. I had a paid-for apartment that I could deal my drugs out of. Had I not had that paid-for apartment that my family provided, I would have been dealing drugs out on the street. And had I been dealing drugs out on the street, I probably would have gotten busted much sooner in life than I eventually did. So, and that's the problem. These things sound obvious to say, but it's different when we live them. And I lived them. And I'm a person who society gave unfair advantages to, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to discuss these, to interact with persons such as yourselves and your colleagues and the 5 Ventures, to turn my life around, to take all that stuff and really turn it into something positive. I've got a lot of opportunities for which I'm immensely grateful.
Well, we're all grateful for the blessings that come our way. And if we're not, we should be. And we can do so really by listening to the humility that you're expressing right now. But Ed, tell us a little bit about what happened when you were 37 years old that gave you the strength to begin, if it wasn't an all-at-once move, a gradual move. What can you tell us about the inspiration you had when you were 37 to cut your ties to substance abuse?
I spent a night or two here and there in a homeless shelter. I remember being in a big outdoor room where we would smoke cigarettes. An enterprising young man was selling Marlboros for 25 cents. I had 3 quarters in my pocket. After I bought my cigarette and was smoking it, I realized I had just spent 1/3 of my entire net worth on a single cigarette. That was one of the things. It wasn't any one thing. You know, they say about persons who let ourselves sink to the level I let myself sink. Only a couple things happen to us. We get locked up in an institution or in prison. We get covered up, as in covered up by 6 feet of earth, or we get sobered up. Those were my 3 choices. I could go into an institution, I could die, or I could get sober. And all the people who had been reaching out to me, my family, friends, after a while, it finally, enough of it sunk in, and I let myself go low enough where I realized that, hey, I could get sober, or I could take one of those other 2 options. And it was really a matter of that.
And what process did you take once you've made the decision and 100% commitment to become sober and become clean? What process did you take to strengthen your resolve and give you the strength to overcome any temptations to revert to the type of behavior that complicated your life for more than 20 years?
It was remarkable to hear you talk about your 3-pronged approach, because it was something I sort of followed in a very similar way. I educated myself. I developed support networks, and I dedicated myself to improving organizations and communities of which I was a part. On a practical level, I got involved in the 12 steps. I met a lot of individuals who gave me a great deal of what they'd been given, and they gave me a means to give back to others as well. And then I looked for that spirit. I took the spiritual approach. I started to believe that there's something out there, some force. I don't completely understand it, but it's like, to paraphrase George Harrison of the Beatles, everything can wait except the search for spiritual meaning. Everything can wait. My career, my relationships, those things are important, but they can all wait. That search for what that spiritual meaning is, that can't wait. When I keep that in mind, I dedicate myself to helping others and doing what I can, and that keeps me away from temptations when they do arise.
So that positive transformation began when you were 37 years old. How long has it been now that you have been sober?
It was 10 years last October. I've been off meth. I've been off drugs entirely 10 years.
Congratulations. That's really a testament to your strength. And why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what you've been doing for the past 10 years to live a life of meaning and relevance and contribution?
I've been contributing and bringing the most value I can to the various organizations of which I'm a part.
I know that at one point you were the CEO and founder of a self-defense institute. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, one thing, it was funny when I heard Justin talking about how when you and he met in prison, his goal was to lose 40 pounds. Do I have that right?
I think so, yeah. So you need to lose some weight.
Right, and that's what he wanted, and he was focused, and he would go out running, and he would do the pull-ups. I could hear myself when he talked, because I focused on, I thought, if I can lose weight, if I can control my body, if I can control my physical body, then I can control my thoughts, and I can control my feelings. That was where I was at. Part of it was I really wanted to lose weight because I wanted to disappear. I still had the problems, the schizophrenia, the symptoms I had, I developed through the psychosis with methamphetamine. Those don't simply go away once one puts down the methamphetamine pipe. I had to deal with a lot of ongoing symptoms, a lot of ongoing difficulties. I channeled that into physical activity. From there, I got into something called Krav Maga, which is an Israeli form of self-defense. And there I found, here's something I can do to the extent I want to do it. I can take my physical activity to a point of doing it 2-3 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week. I fell in with a great group of folks. Can I say their name?
Please.
They're called the Krav Maga Institute, the Tactica Institute, Danny Zelig, and some other individuals there. I met a great guy, Rory Miller, who's a prolific author. He became my friend and mentor. What perhaps is of greatest value to your viewers is to say that I found great individuals. I gave the best I could. I always brought what value I could to the greatest extent. Wasn't perfect. I made a lot of mistakes, but I kept getting up. I kept persevering. I kept thinking of how can I make the people around me better? How can I make my organizations better? And I did so, a little at a time. I took some steps. I went back. I slid back. I made my mistakes, but I kept going and I kept going.
And that is the path of everybody who overcomes a struggle. It's really just being persistent, making a commitment, seeing ourselves as being something more than the decisions that we made at the worst part of our life, and then just start making gradually better decisions and setting a path and a strategy and holding ourselves accountable to that strategy. And it certainly sounds like that's what you did. I know that there was a point in time that you were working with, was it the Boys and Girls Clubs or at-risk youth? What was it?
I had a wonderful opportunity to, yes, you're exactly correct, the Boys and Girls Clubs. I went in and taught self-defense to some of the youth there. I would do corporate trainings. I was hired by Cisco, Google, LinkedIn, Slack, many other fine organizations. And these organizations, they liked me and they knew I provided a good service, but it was because of Defy Ventures that they really brought me on board. So they support individuals such as yourself and such as Defy. These organizations have really done a lot to support criminal justice reform, and I got some of the benefits of that.
So we are absolutely about criminal justice reform, prison reform, sentencing reform, and spreading more awareness for individuals, for individuals who are still trapped inside of the system, trying to improve outcomes for them. Yeah. And one of the places that we frequently hear about is Defy Ventures, which is a leading group that helps individuals to understand a little bit more about the entrepreneurial spirit and how they can use their God-given talents to create products or services of value and come back to society strong with their dignity intact. And that's something that Prison Professors really stands behind. I'd love it, since you are an active representative of Defy Ventures, tell us a little bit about that organization and the population that you serve.
I can't say enough good things about Defy Ventures. They've been so good to me. Catherine Hoke, who's the founder, and the team she's assembled, they gave me, although I found Defy when I had already put drugs and criminal activity behind me, something like 8 years before, I never felt like a complete person until I found Defy Ventures.
How did you find them?
I was a member of Toastmasters. As a way of learning to express myself, I would at Toastmasters, the public speaking club. As a way of learning to express myself and heal myself, I would do speeches at Toastmasters about my addiction and about overcoming my criminal history. Somebody at Toastmasters put me in touch with someone who got me in with Defy Ventures.
And what was your first experience? Where was it? Did you go into a prison to teach, or did you meet them someplace? Tell us about that.
I spoke to some individuals on the phone. I had a couple of interviews. I met someone in person. I just felt a very welcoming community. I felt a community of people who really understood me, even to some extent more so than the 12-step community, which I used to do a lot of and which I got a great deal of positive experience from. But Defy Ventures showed me that I have unique gifts. I have unique talents. I have unique skills. Defy Ventures showed me that, by and large, I have as much to give as anybody else, and I could really be a part of society. That aspect of myself I wanted to bury, the humiliation that I used to feel about having been a drug addict, the part of me I just wanted to go away. I realized, hey, that's my strength. That's what I have to bring to the world. That's something I can share and something I can give. It was Defy Ventures that helped me do that.
Tell us about your role at Defy, and what does a typical day look like with you working with that team?
Well, what we do is we have a learning curriculum. We teach entrepreneurship, employment skills, and character development. Currently, much of that is offered via video courses. We have some amazing professors, leaders in various companies. Harvard Business School professors have taught for us. I take those video courses and make them into written courses.
And where do you distribute those courses?
Right now, we're doing them in prison, and we're looking at what our strategy is going to be for making them available to the Defy community at large.
And have you been inside of any of the prisons where Defy is currently operating?
Yes, I've been to Valley State. I've been to Soledad, and I'm hoping to go to Pelican Bay in later this year, later in the spring.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the people who are serving time in prison respond to the positive message that Defy is bringing in?
These are men. I've only been in men's prisons, so I say men who just an inspiring group of individuals. These are the persons I met in prison. They show me a side of myself. And even coming as I do from a professional background, before my addiction really took over, they show me the insights that the men I've met inside of prison really, it means it brings a lot to me. It brings a lot to me as an individual. And I'm sorry, I kind of rambled. Did I get around to answering your question? You
answered it just fine, Ed. We're just looking for your perspective on what is it that I want to know. The people who are serving time, you mentioned going to Pelican Bay, where people are serving, multiple decades sometimes, and they get exposed to entrepreneurs and citizens who want to come in and help them learn new skills and learn new tactics. My question is how do you find their mindset change when they have an opportunity to listen and learn from leaders like yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So, at Defy Ventures, we're about a two-way street. Our mission involves transforming both the lives of executives as well as transforming the lives of the incarcerated and the formerly incarcerated. These are men and women. I mentioned before, if I'm a lot like the business executives. I have my college education, I have my professional career, I have all that. But I'm also a lot like the men and women who are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. I see myself in them. And as I mentioned, if it hadn't been for my skin color and my socioeconomic background and the unfair advantages society gave me, I would have been serving probably significant amounts of time as well because of the mistakes that I made. So if I'm a lot like these executives, and I'm also a lot like the men and women Defy serves who are incarcerated, we can see how those connections are formed. The connections, we can see our own humanity. The men and women in the Defy community who are incarcerated, I see them grasping onto their humanity and grasping onto just how much they do have to give to our society, which is a lot. It's a huge amount. And I see them exploring their gifts, discovering what their talents are, finding out that they deserve a second chance. They deserve a second chance, and they take that second chance, and they in turn inspire our executives, our volunteers, our coaches, men and women who come and spend their time. To give you an example, Google sends busloads of people to prison events to come in and serve as coaches. Google's been an amazing supporter of Defy Ventures. And it's because of the goodness of their heart, yes, but it's also because the men and women inside prison also give a lot to people who work at Google. Just a beautiful way of seeing that two-way street, the way the two groups inspire and learn from one another. It's really quite remarkable.
It certainly is. Can you give us an idea of how many people are on your team at Defy and contributing to this movement of bringing prison reform and innovative policies into the prison system?
As far as employees, I believe we have about 60 now. And I think we are one of the fastest growing nonprofits in America.
You have 60 people with your group now?
With Defy's employees, as far as volunteers, I don't want to quote a number, but I know it's in the thousands. We have thousands of people who have volunteered.
That's an amazing accomplishment, and we're so grateful to Defy Ventures. I hope that you will connect us with more of your team members so that we can profile them here on the Prison Professors program. We are always striving to inspire and educate people inside, and my partner Sean and I visited a prison where Defy had its course, and I can tell you that the people there were incredibly enthusiastic at what you guys offer, and we just want to spread more awareness to people in society and in prisons that there are good people out here trying to bring meaningful prison reform. And I want to thank you for sharing your story with us, Ed.
It's been a pleasure, of course.
Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you that you'd like to share with our audience before I say goodbye on this episode?
The one thing that struck me, having watched your materials, is how you cited Nelson Mandela and Gandhi. And I'm just struck by when I read Nelson Mandela's book, what really resonated with me was how he brought people together. That seemed to be what he was all about. It was bringing people together. And I didn't realize that to the extent I do now, having read his book. And in this day and age, that's really something that many of us can use, and that many of us can learn from, even more so than we already have from Nelson Mandela. Gandhi, there's a quote from Gandhi about how he believes that any man or woman can do what he did as long as they put in the same amount of work. That's a lot coming from someone like Mahatma Gandhi to say that, what he was really about was hard work. When we look at people like Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, about working hard, about bringing people together, and I see an individual such as yourself, Michael, and Prison Professors, it's despite everything else that's going on in the world today, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, and it gives me a great deal of hope and inspiration. I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much, Gandhi. One of the things that inspired me is he always said that try to be the change that you want to see in the world. That's what we see from Ed Kressey and the many people at Defy Ventures. And I hope that that's what you see our team at Prison Professors is trying to do as well. I want to thank you, Ed, for giving us your time. I know you're a busy guy, and I want to let those in our audience know if they are looking for more information on Defy. I will write some show notes with links to it at our website on prisonprofessors.com. And if you'd like to have any more information on what our team does to try and move the needle toward prison reform and improving outcomes, please text the word Prison Pro to 44222. That's text Prison Pro to 44222. We will be back tomorrow with another inspiring guest. Thank you.